Melphiera, daughter of a count, lives a peculiar life for a noblewoman. Despite her beauty and refinement, she is known throughout the land as the Voracious Villainess, a title earned through her unusual love for monster meat. One quiet afternoon, as she sits and eats alone in the garden, an elderly man approaches, dragged by the strange aroma of her meal. Curious, he asks for a taste. Melphiera obliges, and he samples the dish. The flavor amazes him. Delighted, he praises her cooking and asks what kind of meat it is. When Melphiera calmly reveals that it's backhorn meat, the old man's delight turns to horror. Backhorns are monstrous creatures infamous for their deadly poison, and the thought of eating such a thing makes him turn pale. Whispers of the rumored villainous woman flood his mind as he goes away in terror. Meanwhile, Melphiera continues her meal unbothered. She believes that even the most poisonous or revolting creature can be turned into a delicacy with the right preparation. Though no one else shares her conviction yet, she is certain that one day they will. Later, she attends a lavish autumn banquet hosted by King Leonidas to celebrate a prosperous harvest. The royal dishes are exquisite, refined in flavor and presentation. Melphiera savors each bite with quiet pleasure until her attendant reminds her of why she's truly there. Irritated, she recalls that the event doubles as a matchmaking opportunity for nobles. Her stepmother has warned that if she fails to find a fiancé this year, she'll be sent to a convent. Even her father insists she settle for any decent knight at this point. Though she attends out of duty, she feels out of place. The other nobles whisper about her reputation, admiring her beauty but recoiling from the rumors that surround her. Feeling the sting of their avoidance, she excuses herself and wanders away, regretting how things have turned out. As she drifts toward a quieter section of the park, she notices there are more knights than nobles here. But before she can dwell on it, something weird happens. A monstrous beast bursts onto the scene, spreading panic. As the commotion erupts, Melphiera spots an elderly couple who have fallen. The old man's leg is broken, so she helps them escape, until a mad backhorn appears behind them. Realizing the danger, Melphiera lures the creature away to protect the couple. Just when the monster closes in, a flash of steel cuts through the air. In an instant, the beast's head falls to the ground. Melphiera blinks in shock as the onlookers gasp. The infamous blood-mad Duke Galbraith has slain it with a single blow. Galbraith is known for his ruthless hunts and thirst for battle, yet strikingly handsome. Regaining her composure, Melphiera thanks him politely. He checks for injuries and warns her to be cautious, but she assures him she's unharmed. Then, noticing drops of the monster's blood on his face, she quickly stops him from letting it touch his lips. She explains that mad backhorns are infused with corrupted magic, and their blood is dangerously toxic. Impressed by her knowledge, the Duke listens as she explains further. If properly prepared, the meat of an untainted beast can be eaten safely, and even taste delicious. But realizing she said too much, Melphiera falters, apologizing for her forwardness. The Duke, instead of recoiling, offers her purified water and insists she clean herself of the blood. When she protests that it doesn't bother her, he looks genuinely surprised to hear she's handled beast blood before. When he asks her name, she introduces herself as Melphiera. The Duke recognizes her. He admits that her reputation precedes her. She is indeed the Voracious Villainess who dares to eat what others fear. Melphiera doesn't deny it. She confesses that she has always been curious about how monster meat might taste, believing that if it must be eaten, it should at least be delicious. Her frankness leaves the Duke momentarily speechless. Flustered, she tries to soften the moment with a small smile, but to her surprise, the Duke's face reddens slightly. She worries she's offended him, but instead, he apologizes and takes her hand once again, guiding her away from the crowd. Then, breaking the silence, he asks a simple question. Was it truly good? At first, she didn't understand. Then he clarifies he's asking about the backhorn meat. Melphiera hesitates, but decides to answer honestly. The texture, she says, is similar to beef, rich, tender, and surprisingly delicious. Because it is a wild game, Melphiera explains, backhorn meat requires great care and preparation, but once properly handled, it can be roasted or stewed beautifully. The Duke listens closely, noting that as long as the creature isn't maddened, its magical flesh doesn't upset the stomach, making it much like ordinary meat. Melphiera pauses, caught off guard by his genuine curiosity. Memories of the past flood her mind, how others had laughed or recoiled whenever she spoke of monster meat. Yet the Duke listens with interest rather than disgust. For the first time, she feels truly heard. She explains that to make monster meat safe for consumption, the residual magic within it must be removed during the bleeding process. Then the Duke says her name and asks if she would ever prepare monster meat for him. The question leaves her speechless. No one has ever asked her for such a thing before. She cautiously asks if his body can handle it. Eating the flesh of maddened beasts often carries great risk, she warns, as the toxins can cause serious harm. The Duke smiles and assures her that he is perfectly fine. Encouraged, Melphiera explains that if the creature isn't maddened, its meat can be enjoyed just like a normal animal. It can be grilled on skewers, made into sausages, or prepared in countless ways. Her enthusiasm makes the Duke's expression soften into something both unsettling and eager. He admits he can hardly wait to try it all.
それは楽しみだ。
Before long, they arrive at House Galbraith Pavilion. Melphiera admires its rugged beauty and remarks that it's a marvelous place. The Duke urges her to make herself at home. The butler greets them warmly. The butler introduces himself as Chaos, and the Duke instructs him to bring Melphiera a change of clothes. While waiting, Melphiera's gaze drifts to the weapons displayed across the pavilion: swords, spears, and trophies from hunts. The Duke gestures toward a basin, telling her she can wash her face and hands there while she waits. She protests that he needn't trouble himself, but he insists. When she urges him to wash first instead, the Duke casually removes his shirt. Melphiera's breath catches. She's seen hunters and knights wash before, but watching him feels entirely different. The Duke notices her silence and asks what's wrong. Flustered, she blurts that his physique is impressive. Trying to recover, she quickly adds that with such arms, it's no wonder he could behead the beast so cleanly. The Duke frowns slightly, thoughtful, as if recalling the strike, and acknowledges her compliment with a quiet hum. As he washes the blood from his hands, Melphiera joins him, rinsing her own. Watching him move with practiced ease, she wonders if she could ever learn to fight monsters herself. He tells her it's possible with training, but that her slender arms aren't suited for swinging a blade. She should leave the fighting to him, he says confidently. Then, he asks if there's any creature she wishes to try and promises to hunt it for her. Melphiera's eyes light up. The Great Forest, she thinks, is a paradise of monsters. The thought of tasting such creatures excites her. The Duke watches her expression soften and gently wipes a smear of blood from her cheek. She thanks him, and when he finishes, she insists on returning the favor, carefully dabbing the blood from his face. Just then, Chaos enters, freezing at the sight of the Duke half-dressed before a young lady. His eyes widen in horror as he scolds his master for indecency. The Duke quickly explains that he merely removed his shirt, but the butler insists that even that is improper before an unmarried noblewoman. Both Melphiera and the Duke flush red. After some time, Melphiera changes into the dress Chaos brings, a borrowed dress, the Duke explains, from the Queen herself. It fits her perfectly, elegant and graceful. Then the Duke presents a freshly severed monster head as a trophy. To everyone's astonishment, Melphiera's eyes gleam with admiration rather than fear. She praises his skill, wishing she could hunt with the same mastery. When it is time to leave, the Duke escorts Melphiera back to her carriage. She thanks him sincerely for saving her life, believing this will be their farewell. But the Duke smiles and promises they will meet again, and that next time he'll bring her a gift. Melphiera smiles shyly and tells him to be careful. He promises he will, adding with a teasing edge that for her, he will slay a royal noodle. The mention of such a rare beast makes her blink in surprise before she catches herself, scolding her own excitement. She suggests that if he truly means to hunt one, it would be best to capture it alive. The meat is more tender that way. As the carriage is prepared, Melphiera reflects on how different the Duke is from his fearsome reputation. The blood-mad title, she realizes, hides a man who is kind, composed, and far more considerate than gossip suggests. Before she departs, she offers him a small basket of jerky made from scats, a beast native to her father's lands. She assures him it's safe, carefully prepared to remove all toxins. The Duke accepts it eagerly and, despite Chaos's protests about possible poison, takes a bite. The rich umami and sharp flavor make his eyes brighten. He laughs softly, remarking that it's truly delicious. She, in turn, feels a deep, quiet surprise. For so long, others have looked at her with fear or disgust. Yet this man accepts her as she is and even celebrates her passion. As the carriage begins to roll away, Melphiera looks back at him. The Duke meets her gaze, his expression warm and steady. When he asks why she looks so reluctant to leave, she admits softly that she doesn't want to say goodbye. He smiles faintly and promises that their conversation will continue another day. Melphiera nods and departs, reflecting on how strange the day has been. The banquet itself had been dull, but meeting the Duke has made it unexpectedly wonderful. Perhaps she thinks he is only curious about the infamous, voracious villainess. Even so, she allows herself a small, fragile spark of hope. Melphiera just got back to her land, snow everywhere and freezing cold. She's glad the trip ended before winter got any worse. Her attendant agrees it was smart to return early. When the carriage stops at the palace gates, her father's already there looking super tense. The moment he sees her, he rushes over, opens the door, and she can tell he's upset. Before she can even explain that her search for a fiancé went nowhere, he starts scolding her. He reminds her she shouldn't be involved with someone as high-ranking as a duke. Then he demands to know why the Duke of Galbraith is asking for her hand. Melphiera is completely thrown off. She thought the Duke was just curious about her or her bad reputation, not that he'd actually propose. Her father sits beside her, muttering about how he's supposed to respond to such a ridiculous offer. While he looks shaken, she feels even more unsettled inside. A few days earlier, over at the Galbraith Pavilion, the prince listens to reports about a recent hunt. One hunter apparently got too bold and ended up in a monster's den. Duke Galbraith explains calmly that it wasn't just any beast that was toxic and dangerous, but still, no one was hurt. The prince praises him and then drops the formal tone, calling him by his old name, Aristide, and joking that he should call him Brother Maxim like before. Aristide refuses. The whole family thing ended when Maxim became crown prince and Aristide was adopted into the Galbraith line to serve the throne. Duty first, emotions later. The prince gives up on that and changes the topic, eyeing the little basket Aristide's carrying. He asks what's inside. Aristide brushes it off, saying it's nothing. Of course, the prince doesn't listen. He snatches a piece and eats it. It's dried meat, spicy and rich. When he asks what it is, Aristide sighs and admits it's made from a rare monster. The prince laughs, saying it tastes better than any royal beef. Then he teases Aristide, asking if it's from that redhead, the Voracious Villainess. Aristide snaps back that her name is Melphiera. The prince smiles, saying that titles don't matter when two people actually connect. Aristide brushes him off, saying he's canceling future hunts and walking away. The prince might be annoying, but maybe he's not entirely wrong. He can't stop thinking about Melphiera, her fire, her fearlessness, how she'd looked even while covered in monster blood. She's stuck in his head. Later, his aide Chaos reports that the monster habitats are secured. Aristide praises him, but immediately suspects Chaos told the prince about Melphiera. Chaos pretends innocence, and Aristide lets it drop. When he's finally alone, he looks toward the horizon and thinks about her again, how she didn't believe he'd bring her a gift, how her eyes had filled with tears. He swears to himself he'll never let her cry again. Back to Melphiera, she stares at a jeweled box in disbelief the Duke really sent it. Her father explains a messenger on a blazing eagle brought it 7 days ago, leaving everyone stunned. Melphiera wishes she'd seen it herself. Her father cuts her off, asking what really happened at the banquet. Calmly, she says it doesn't matter how many times he asks. She was attacked by a crazed beast, and the Duke saved her. Her father reminds her they'd never even met before that. She unfolds the Duke's letter and reads, he enjoyed spending time with her and now wants to marry her. She freezes, wondering if there's some hidden reason behind such a bold move. Her father says they'll need a strong excuse to turn down a Duke, and for now, he'll draft a reply. Melphiera agrees. Later, after a bath, she looks in the mirror holding the letter again. The name, Aristide Roger du Galbraith, looks beautiful in his elegant handwriting. Her father was right, they barely know each other. All they'd shared was a brief chat about monster meat. Then it hits her, maybe that's what this is about. He has no one who understands his weird food obsession. Maybe she could be that person, someone who gets it. As she closes the letter, but then new words appear. The Duke complaining that the evening after she left was painfully boring, and that his clueless aide ate the jerky she'd made. The Duke's letter says he's planning to visit before winter gets worse on the 18th. Melphiera reads the date and freezes because that's tomorrow. Her father looks just as shocked. Back in her room, she keeps replaying her father's panicked face, but can't really blame him, she's just as anxious. Her heart's pounding at the thought of seeing the Duke again. Is he really coming to propose, or is it just about the monster meat? Either way, there's no point stressing. She looks at her late mother's portrait, whispers that the Duke might actually be serious, and wonders if he'll understand the value of their family's work. Her mother's old words echo in her head to help those who struggle through these harsh, frozen lands. Melphiera reminds herself that she's carrying that mission forward. She's going to make Monster Me the best it can be. With that thought, she finally falls asleep. Morning comes, and her stepmother is banging on her door, scolding her for not being ready yet. Melphiera stammers that she was waiting for instructions, but she just frowns at the dusty room and messy hair. She warns her that finding a fiancé is urgent and looking like this is disgraceful. The man visiting might be a duke, but he's also the blood-mad Duke, terrifying and violent. Suddenly, a thunderous roar shakes the air. The stepmom yelps in fear, asking what's happening. Melphiera rushes to the window and gasps. Glacial dragons fill the sky. And right in the middle of them is the Duke, flying in like something out of a legend, waving at her with a confident smile. He shouts up, asking if she got his letter, and says he's come to formally propose and to deliver the gift he promised. Then calls out to the Duke to land the dragons in the northern pasture. He nods, steers the dragons that way, and flies off, leaving her totally stunned and flustered. She closes the window, her heart still racing. The Duke looked incredible, so calm and commanding as he rode that massive glacial dragon. It was way grander than the little ones she saw near home. She can't help but wish she'd also seen that blazing eagle her father mentioned. Celia keeps calling her, but when Melphiera finally answers, her stepmother claims she's feeling sick and tells her to fetch her father. She protests as the Duke's here to propose, but Celia just waves her off, muttering that she now understands why people call him the blood-mad Duke. As Celia leaves, Melphiera straightens up and declares that she'll happily accept the Duke's proposal. The room goes quiet. Out in the pasture, the Duke greets her. She mentions she just got back from the capital, and he apologizes for showing up so soon. She's embarrassed about her messy hair, but there's no time to worry, keeping him waiting would be worse. His aide, Chaos, apologizes for the sudden visit, saying the Duke was too impatient to wait. Melphiera laughs lightly, saying he probably just didn't want to travel in deep winter. Chaos admits that's true, their tyrant doesn't know the meaning of patience. Then the Duke leans in a little, looking at her hair and saying it's fluffier than he expected. Mela blushes and mumbles that it's hard to tame. He just looks amused. Suddenly, he asks where to deliver her gift. She freezes. Could it be a monster? Her excitement spikes. He actually brought one. She thanks him and asks to see it. They walk over, and she notices the thing under the cover isn't moving. Worried, she asks if it's already dead. The Duke just smiles and tells her to look. She lifts the cloth and her jaw drops. Shimmering golden fur, elegant horns, it's a royal muddle. The Duke confirms it's a rare one, its golden coat worth a fortune, and its meat marbled perfectly after feasting all autumn. Melphiera lights up, gushing about how special muddles are normally white with 2 spiral horns and a central spike, their fur prized but their meat ignored. A golden one is almost unheard of. She can't believe he's really giving her something this rare. When he takes her hand and guides it to the creature, she gasps it's alive. He explains he used magic to keep it asleep during travel. Her mind starts racing, roasting, grilling, stewing, every dish she could make from it. She hides her flustered face, thanking him from the heart. The Duke looks pleased, and even Chaos smiles at the sight. A little later, her father arrives, thanking the Duke for coming such a long way. The Duke apologizes for arriving without warning, saying he wanted her answer before winter deepened. Melphiera suddenly remembers why he's actually here to propose. She asks her father to let the Duke's dragons hunt in the nearby Bart Mountains, and he agrees. When he notices the royal muddle, he asks if it's dragon food. Mela quickly explains it's for her, and that the Duke wants to try her cooking. She also takes the chance to ask for approval to open her research facility. Her father hesitates but agrees. The Duke then says he already knows about her reputation, the villainous glutton talk, and that he doesn't care. He's proposing anyway. Her father is stunned by his honesty. The Duke mentions he should take care of the muddle before it wakes, shocking the Count when he realizes it's alive. Melphiera laughs, and the Count admits the gift is both dangerous and precious. The Duke smiles, saying he selfishly wants to taste monster meat himself, and asks to watch her cook it. Her father agrees, giving them full permission to use the facility. So, the Duke and Melphiera hop on a dragon together. When it lets out a roar, she comments that it sounds kind of cute. As they approach her research facility, Mela's nervous but excited. From above, she looks down at everything she's built, her mother's legacy, her dream, and hopes the Duke will truly understand her love for monsters and the meaning behind all her work. As they flew through the freezing air, the Duke looked calm and confident, while Melphiera tried to hide how nervous she was. Beneath her polite smile, she was panicking a little, because once he saw what she'd been hiding, he might never see her the same way again. When they landed, the Duke immediately noticed the glowing magic circle carved into the stone floor. Melphiera explained that it was her mother's design, one she'd improved herself for monster extraction. She led him further in, showing him a cloudy quartz flask sitting among her tools, a vessel that could draw both magic and blood from beasts. The Duke studied it, clearly impressed, as Melphiera explained that it could change shape depending on her magic. Then, her voice dropped as she asked if she could watch him behead a monster again. The Duke paused, then agreed. She admitted she couldn't handle the royal muddle's size alone, so he called his knights over. The Galbraith soldiers worked fast, cleaning the creature like experts, clearly used to harvesting monster parts. When they were done, Melphiera ran her hands through the golden fur, admiring its softness and imagining the fine garments it could make, but her real interest was in what lay inside. She placed a hand over the beast, whispered a quiet prayer, and activated the magic circle beneath them. The Duke's sword flashed, cleanly severing the creature's head. She froze in awe, stunned by his ways. Then she lifted the flask and began her chant. The beast's blood rose in a twisting red stream, glowing with power. The Duke watched, alarmed, as the liquid kept flowing far past the flask's limit. Melphiera's mind raced. This had never happened before. The power was too much, but stopping now could be dangerous. The Duke stepped closer, asking what he should do. Without pausing her chant, she told him to swap in a new flask. He moved quickly, replacing it in one motion. She took a deep breath, continued the spell, and finally drew out the last of the energy. The royal muddle went still. When it was over, Melphiera's knees gave out, and the Duke caught her before she fell. She told him the process was complete, and his gaze shifted to the creature's body, still full and vibrant, its flesh unspoiled. She explained that she'd learned to extract only the blood and magic while keeping the body intact, preserving the meat's quality. The Duke asked if this was her own invention, and she told him it came from her parents' work. Her mother had created the method during a famine 17 years ago, using monsters to feed the starving people. After her death, Melphiera had dedicated her life to refining it, both to honor her and to keep helping their land survive. Then, with a shy laugh, she admitted she'd also grown fascinated by tasting rare monsters herself. The Duke's eyes lingered on the glowing flasks. He asked what she planned to do with the extracted magic and blood. Calmly, she said she used it as fuel for cooking and lighting her lab for months. He chuckled at that before telling her that the power sealed in those little flasks was strong enough to destroy entire nations. Startled, Melphiera admits she's only ever worked with small, harmless creatures. She never thought her research could have such dangerous consequences. The Duke's expression softens, and he tells her not to blame herself. He says rumors twist innocent things into evil and promises to protect her from anyone who tries to hurt her. He suddenly teases her about the gossip claiming she drinks fresh blood. Melphiera turns red, stammering that it's absolutely not true. The Duke steps closer, gently brushing a lock of her fiery red hair between his fingers. He comments on how it glows in the light, how her green eyes shimmer like they're reflecting magic. Flustered, she insists it's just the light from the spell circle, not enchantment, not charm, just energy. The air between them turns awkwardly warm, both mumbling half compliments and tripping over their words. It's soft, shy until a loud voice suddenly cuts through, making them both jump. Snapping back to business, Melphiera clears her throat and suggests they finish preparing the meat before anyone comes looking for them. The Duke nods quickly, pretending to be calm. While the Duke feeds his dragon, Melphiera walks up gracefully and tells him the royal hunting permit has arrived. He thanks her and jokes that the royal muddle's organ meat won't be nearly enough for his dragon's appetite. She laughs, asking if the dragon actually complained, half horrified, half amused. He admits it's greedy, and right on cue, his own stomach growls. Melphiera smirks, asking if he's the hungry one now. The Duke admits, with a sheepish grin, that he's never felt such hunger before. She glances at the platter nearby. The marbled meat looks too good to ignore. The Duke agrees and says they should eat it fresh. With playful excitement, they decide to slice some and grill it over a fire. The Duke even pulls out a small tin of spices. Curious, Melphiera pinches a bit and tastes it. Her eyes light up instantly. The aroma fills the air, warm and savory, herbs and salt blending perfectly with the meat's natural sweetness. He confesses he stole the blend from his royal chef. Laughing, Melphiera reminds him, this is supposed to be a poison test, not a feast. He nods solemnly, though the grin on his face ruins the act. She sprinkles the spices carefully and tells him it needs to cook longer to be safe. He groans, saying waiting that long is torture. When he reaches for the meat too soon, she stops him, insisting on perfection. Just when they're about to taste it, a sudden voice breaks the calm. Chaos appears out of nowhere. Both of them flinch. The Duke, already irritated, snaps that whatever it is can wait. But Chaos's sharp eyes immediately find the sizzling meat. Smirking, he questions what exactly they're doing, clearly enjoying how guilty they look. Trying to cover it up, the Duke hands him the permit and tells him to go feed the dragons. Chaos doesn't budge. He points out that the dragons are crying from hunger while their noble master is busy grilling. The Duke sighs, cornered, and grudgingly offers him a piece. Of course, Chaos pushes for more and wins. Then, turning the knife, he says the other knights should get to try too purely for poison testing, of course. Soon, the smell of roasting meat fills the air, and the soldiers can't help but gather around, hungry and curious. The Duke guards the first skewer like treasure when Chaos steps closer, jokingly refusing the first piece, the one Lady Melphiera cooked just for the Duke. The Duke flushes, accusing him of teasing, but Chaos just laughs, calling himself a simple man who loves good food. Finally, Melphiera hands Chaos a piece to taste. He takes a bite and freezes. Then his eyes widen. The meat is unbelievably tender, rich and juicy, with no trace of that rough monster flavor. Melphiera beams with joy while the Duke groans, dying to try it himself but pretending to worry about toxins. He demands to know if Chaos feels any strange effects, and Chaos assures him it's fine. Still, he points out that magic poisoning can hit later. Melphiera admits she's never been sick from it, but says others have, sometimes right away, sometimes hours later. The Duke finally snaps, grabs Chaos by the collar, and says he's done waiting, he's eating too. The knights cheer in agreement, shouting that it's unfair if Chaos eats alone. Smiling, Melphiera encourages everyone to join before it gets cold, promising she'll have medicine ready if anyone falls ill. The mood turns bright and lively. The soldiers dig in, amazed at how flavorful it is. The Duke is just as stunned, saying he can't believe monster meat could taste this good. Melphiera explains how the muddle's herbivore diet gives the meat a fruity richness, and how cooling it slightly keeps the juices locked in. The Duke praises her as a genius, but she shyly credits her mother's research. He tells her not to be modest, this is entirely her skill. The knights, hooked by the taste, beg to learn her cooking methods and suggest bringing future monster hunts to her lab. Chaos laughs and agrees, while the Duke grimaces, realizing how many incredible meals he's probably thrown away before. Melphiera just laughs, saying most people still think eating monster meat is taboo. When the crowd finally quiets down, the Duke reaches for another piece and freezes when Melphiera softly calls his name. He quickly pretends he wasn't overeating, muttering something about still having dinner later. She just smiles and invites him to follow her to the lab. Inside, the Duke's eyes widen. The place is massive, packed with tools, notes, strange equipment, and glittering materials. Melphiera apologizes for the mess, but he shakes his head, saying it's exactly what he imagined a scholar's lab should look like. His gaze lands on some spiked traps, and she explains they're for catching monsters alive. He's impressed by her creativity. As she brews tea, he asks if the knights help her hunt. She says sometimes, but often she works with local hunters or alone. That surprises him. He asks if the townsfolk or her father oppose her work. She says they don't outright stop her, but they avoid talking about it. Many of them still believe eating monsters is wrong, even though her mother once saved their lives during famine by doing exactly that. The Duke nods, saying it's all because of animism, the belief that monsters are sacred and shouldn't be eaten. Melphiera admits she's not brave, just determined to keep her mother's legacy alive. He then asks gently why she keeps pushing forward when everyone refuses to acknowledge her. She looks down and quietly mentions the tragedy from 17 years ago. The Duke's eyes darken, he remembers it too. It's the reason he was adopted into another noble house. He takes her hand softly and leads her to the sofa, saying it'll be easier to talk there. Once seated, he urges her to tell him how she became known as the Voracious Villainess. Caught off guard, she hesitates, but he reminds her of why he came not for duty, but for her. He tells her he already knows much about her family's past. She admits her reputation would make her a burden in high society. But the Duke shakes his head, saying he doesn't want her to stop her research. If she joins the Galbraith family, she'll have all the freedom she needs. Then, his gaze softens as he says he doesn't just want to understand her work, he wants to know her and her heart. Melphiera freezes, stunned. He continues, calling himself the blood-mad Duke, a man soaked in monster blood, unworthy of his title, and asks if she's afraid of him. Her heart pounds, and in that moment, she finally understands. When he said he wanted to know her better, the truth was exactly what he meant. When the Duke asks her what she truly thinks of him, Melphiera freezes. She pulls herself together and says she's never found him frightening, that he feels gallant, even handsome. When he softly asks if she's sincere, she promises she's honest and sure anyone would agree, but his shy reaction makes her doubt whether she said the right thing. Trying to recover, she praises his hair, likening it silver gray to moonlight. He shrugs it off as dull. Still, she confesses that his amber eyes glowing gold with magic in battle made her heart race. He tells her the color comes from his power, the sight, and asks whether that unsettles her. She immediately says no, remembering how his golden stare burned as he felled the backhorn. He wonders if she's simply idolizing the moment, but she insists it's his intensity she can't forget. Her words soften him, and he admits he's relieved so long as it doesn't trouble her. Calmly, she replies that someone has to fight the monsters. He is only doing his duty, and blood or scars do not lessen his value. When he admits he isn't refined, she points out that his strength brings peace to the people of Galbraith and to far-off places beyond its borders. When he awkwardly asks what she thinks of him as a fiancé, her father's voice rings in her head, saying a night would have been enough, and a Duke seems beyond anything she expected. She's absorbed in her studies, rough around the edges and indifferent to courtly polish. Beside him she'd appear wanting. All she's ever wanted is uninterrupted work. Still, if her father approved, living with the Duke would feel like paradise, and she scolds herself for sounding so calculating. Regaining control, Melphiera concedes that he's admired by many noblewomen, while she stands before him reviled as a voracious villainess. If they were to wed, his people would likely never accept her. The Duke, however, assures her his people would welcome her, leaving Melphiera momentarily speechless. He then asks whether she knows the Urzani Woods. She remembers it as a vast, monster-choked forest within Galbraith. He agrees she's right to call it a trove of beasts. No matter how many he slays, more arise. He explains that when monsters breed unchecked, the land soaks in magic until it becomes toxic, driving the creatures mad, an endless cycle that forces him to keep hunting. That, he says, is the fate attached to the Galbraith name. Melphiera hears the weight in his voice and speaks softly, but he continues. Monsters have always been mere curses to him. Still, hearing her speak so eagerly about devouring them and watching her prepare a grand royal dish surprises him. Her way of seeing things is unlike anyone he's ever met. While the people of Galbraith occasionally consume monsters, none have ever considered completely extracting their magic before doing so. Melphiera admits that her research is her only real strength. But the Duke rejects that notion, recognizing her ability to transform dangerous monsters into valuable resources as something exceptional and vital. He assures her that her work will be welcomed in Galbraith. The idea that even a so-called voracious villainess could make a meaningful contribution. The Duke promises that under his protection, she will want for nothing. He will shield her from malice while urging her to use her knowledge for the good of his people. Overwhelmed by gratitude, she resolves to accept his offer completely. Knowing that his generosity is saving her in ways she can hardly understand and feeling unworthy of such kindness, she gathers her courage. When the Duke reminds her that he dislikes indirectness, Melphiera quickly and assures him of her acceptance. She admits that her life revolves around research, that she lacks the grace or refinement expected of a noblewoman. Yet, she can still support him by preparing the monsters he hunts so that none of their worth is wasted. She offers him flasks to aid in his hunts, declaring that this is all she can contribute. And if that is enough, she asks him to grant her the honor of marriage. They are suddenly interrupted by Marchalrayd Knight Captain Claude, who announces that the mansion is ready and that the Count awaits them in the drawing room. The Duke acknowledges the message, and as they prepare to leave, Claude quietly advises Melphiera not to discuss matters of the land or her research with anyone unfamiliar before leading them onward. Watching this, the Duke realizes Claude has been aware of his every movement, always observing him closely. Given the notoriety of the blood-mad Duke proposing to the Count's daughter, such vigilance is unsurprising, and the Duke understands the man's caution. Later, when they meet with Count Marchalrayd, the Count asks whether the Duke is truly certain of his decision. The Duke assures him that the Galbraith family would be honored to welcome such an extraordinary daughter into their line. The Count expresses his relief but hesitates, recalling the incident at the banquet. The Duke dismisses it as nothing more than a tedious evening, explaining that when the beast appeared, he merely acted on instinct. However, how Melphiera had looked at him moved him, not with fear or disgust, but with calm acceptance. The Count laughs softly, and the Duke admits he himself is surprised that she might truly accept him as he is. He concedes that the proposal may seem sudden, explaining that a meddlesome relative has been pressuring him about marriage. The Count nods knowingly, recognizing the situation. When the Duke asks him to sign the contract, the Count hesitates, mentioning his daughter's unusual fascination with monster flesh. The Duke immediately reassures him that it's no problem at all. As the Count signs the document, he still appears uncertain, prompting the Duke to ask if something else is troubling him. The Count admits he's simply grateful that someone has taken an interest in his daughter. But the Duke firmly corrects him that what he feels for her is desire. Intrigued, the Count leans forward and asks why a man from a family known for adopting heirs would suddenly seek a fiancée. The Duke acknowledges the fairness of the question and answers plainly. There is something about Melphiera that draws him in completely. The Count's expression softens as he speaks of his daughter's circumstances. In a land where animism dominates, her unconventional beliefs and research have made her an outcast. If nothing changes, the Count will be forced to send his daughter to a convent not out of cruelty, but because his position as Count demands it. He admits that, though he is her father, he cannot shield her from the scorn of society. Once Melphiera becomes part of the Galbraith family, he vows to protect her with everything he has, assuring the Count that he can rest easy. 10 days after the Duke's return, Melphiera is busy packing her belongings in preparation for her move to Galbraith's lands. At his request, every piece of her research and equipment from the facility is to accompany her, and he has even assigned knights to help with the transfer. As she works, her thoughts drift to their recent engagement. She recalls examining the contract that binds them. The Duke calmly explains that it is a sacred vow, a spell ensuring that their engagement can never be broken. It is, he says, his way of honoring her sincerity and determination. He only warns her not to let chaos know, as he would surely complain. Then the Count steps in as he declares their engagement official. The Duke acknowledges it with a simple nod, but the Count hesitates before making a cautious request, that the Duke never mention a certain matter to Melphiera. It is the Count himself who has spread the rumors branding his daughter a voracious villainess, all to protect her from those who might exploit her research for darker purposes. The Count admits he may have gone too far. Though the Duke understands his intentions, he calmly asks that such actions never be repeated, addressing him as father. When Melphiera curiously asks what they are discussing, both men exchange a quick glance and brush it off as nothing. Now, in the present, Melphiera's eyes linger on the engagement contract. Mullen enters to report that everything is ready for transport. Melphiera instructs him to ensure the cargo remains frozen solid, deciding to leave behind the creature's golden fur so it can be woven into warm coats for her father and half-brother. Mullen acknowledges her instructions and goes away. She surveys her belongings and murmurs that she is almost done, promising herself she will be ready before the Duke's arrival. Engaged couples rarely move in together so quickly. The Duke insists, citing the harsh winters and the need for her to acclimate to his unique lands, but she cannot shake the feeling that she should be more prepared before beginning her new life. Her gaze drifts to her mother's portrait, and a quiet question forms in her mind. What would her life have been like under her mother's guidance? A knock sounds at the door. The butler enters, announcing that her escort has arrived and that the master awaits her in the main house. Melphiera nods, thanking him and asking that he look after her father in her absence. The butler assures her he will. She takes one last look at the room she has called home, as she will not return here again, at least not as long as her engagement endures. She knocks on her father's door to announce that she is ready, only to freeze when she sees her stepmother, Lady Celia, standing inside. Celia reminds her that, stepmother or not, it is her duty to see her daughter off, though she grimaces at the pungent scent of dragons that makes her feel ill. When Melphiera asks after her father, Celia explains that he is outside overseeing the preparations, making sure everything is accounted for. She glances around the tidy room and warns that nothing unnecessary should be left behind. Melphiera explains that she is leaving the royal moodle's golden fur to be crafted into clothing for her father and half-brother. Celia shivers at the thought, admitting that handling monster fur gives her chills. Melphiera notes its rarity and value, insisting it is too precious for her own use. Celia's expression softens for a moment, but when Melphiera bows gracefully to thank her, Celia's irritation flares. She scolds Melphiera, calling her shameless and mocking the way she has managed to captivate the Duke. She reminds her that even if she bears the Duke's child, her own son Louis will remain the sole heir to their title. Melphiera answers calmly, saying that since she is marrying out of the family, she will henceforth devote herself entirely to serving House Galbraith. Celia's voice rises in exasperation, comparing her demure face to Lady Elise's, and accusing her of always taking the best for herself. The name Elise makes Melphiera pause. Celia knew her mother. But how? Celia warns that if the engagement is ever broken, Melphiera will have no place here and will be sent straight to a convent. Melphiera acknowledges the threat with quiet composure, unshaken. Impatient with the dragon's noise, Celia dismisses her abruptly, ordering her to leave at once. As Melphiera steps out, she reflects that of course Lady Celia could never like her. She has never been the ideal Count's daughter, devoting herself instead to forbidden research on monster consumption. After a moment, she calls for her father. The Count greets her warmly, admiring how well her coat suits her, the very same coat her mother, Elise, wore on her wedding day. The memory softens Melphiera's heart. Melphiera laughs softly, and her father smiles, recalling how Elise always carried herself with childlike whimsy. He admits he regrets never sharing such memories before, but Melphiera assures him there is no need for apology. A sudden roar of dragons indicates the Duke has arrived. He lands gracefully, approaches Melphiera, and lowers his head to kiss her hand. The Count laughs, astonished by the Duke's boldness, and the Duke smiles, explaining that his affection for his fiancée is simply too strong to hide. When he asks if she has everything she needs, Melphiera confirms she does. His eyes sweep over the scattered, unwanted items nearby, noting the piles of old notes and makeshift planks she had written on when paper was scarce. He suggests burning them, and Melphiera agrees. Turning to the Count, he declares that he will now be taking Melphiera with him and helps her mount the waiting dragon. The Count bids her farewell, expecting her return in the spring, but the Duke corrects him Melphiera will remain with him until their wedding in the fall. The Count is surprised, but the Duke reassures him that there is nothing to worry about. Melphiera will be given everything she could ever need. The Count tries to interject, insisting that there are still matters to discuss, but the Duke waves him off confidently, declaring that he will protect Melphiera with all his power and authority. Spotting the piles of discarded notes again, he raises his hand, setting them ablaze. Claude protests that the Duke is going too far, but the Duke only laughs, turning to offer him a position in the Galbraith household, praising his potential. Claude refuses. Melphiera, however, cannot look away from the fire. The flames roar upward, bright and wild, and in her eyes, they are not destruction but celebration. As Melphiera travels beside the Duke on their way to the Galbraith estate, the wind carries their quiet conversation. The Duke asks if she misses her home, and Melphiera admits she does a little, though her thoughts are mostly about what lies ahead. He reassures her that she doesn't need to change, just being herself is enough. He reminds her that a lady of Galbraith's true role is to bring comfort and warmth to her husband. Unsure if she can do that, Melphiera hesitates, but his calm laugh puts her at ease. He tells her she's already doing more than enough, that her presence alone soothes him. The Duke adds that he genuinely enjoys hearing her talk about monsters and promises that once they reach Galbraith, she can focus entirely on her research while he handles the hunting. He mentions that word of her, Royal Moodle, has spread among the knights, who are curious to see her next creations. Hearing that, Melphiera's face lights up with excitement, her earlier worries fading away. As they continue flying, she gazes at the crimson sky and says it looks as if the world's been painted red. The Duke agrees, saying it reminds him of her hair. Flustered, she tries to deny it, but he insists, recalling how her hair glowed when she activated her magic circle. He gently pats her head, calling her beautiful. Embarrassed, Melphiera blushes and struggles to steady her racing heart. As night falls, the dragon's horns start glowing softly, lighting their path through the dark sky. Melphiera admires the sight, thinking it's enchanting like stars drifting across the heavens. Looking down, she notices a large settlement and asks if they'll stop there for the night. The Duke explains its air, a royal port, and that their true destination lies beyond it. Fort Ritterard, a stronghold guarding the kingdom's border. Shocked, she asks if that's really where they're headed, and he reassures her that he'll find her a comfortable room nearby. Curious, Melphiera asks about the area, whether there are forests or rivers nearby, and if they'll be eating outdoors. The Duke seems a little surprised but confirms the fort sits beside a river. She happily says she doesn't mind staying there at all, it'll make gathering food for the dragons much easier. He warns that the fort's meals are simple field rations, but she tells him not to worry. Excitedly, she talks about plump fish monsters and monster fruits that might be in season, saying she'd love to see creatures she's only read about. The Duke laughs and says he understands her curiosity, mentioning a river monster called Zas that appears this time of year. Melphiera's eyes widen with interest, but when she hears it takes time to trap, she looks a little disappointed. Smiling, the Duke suggests setting a trap that night to check in the morning. She's touched by his thoughtfulness, but he insists it's just practical freshly cooked food beats the usual bland rations. Melphiera quietly feels grateful, but also worried he might be overexerting himself for her sake. Remembering what Chaos said about the knights eating awful monster meat, she asks if the Duke has ever cooked any himself. He admits with a wry smile that cooking is a stretch on long expeditions, they just roasted monsters to survive, though the meat was tough and often made them sick. Melphiera quickly realizes they hadn't removed the magical toxins properly. When she asks what monsters they'd tried, he recalls Bolivia being extremely tough, the screamwood almost impossible to chew, and the Gargantes a molten mess he could barely swallow. As the fortress comes into view, the Duke tells her they'll be landing soon. Looking around, she softly says they've finally arrived. At the gate, the guards greet them, and noticing Melphiera, whisper in surprise that the Duke has brought a lady. Mullen orders the West Wing to be prepared for the Duke and Melphiera, but the guard nervously admits the fort has nothing fancy to offer. Hearing that, Melphiera feels uneasy, worried she might be imposing. The Duke tells her to unpack their things and she softly agrees. While she works, he hesitates, saying it's still not too late to head into town. He must have been out of his mind to let her stay in a place like this. Melphiera just smiles and assures him she doesn't mind. The fort actually reminds her of her old research facility, where she often worked until she fell asleep on the floor. The Duke sighs, saying that's not exactly something to be proud of, but Mel only laughs and tells him that as long as he's with her, she has nothing to fear. After a short pause, the Duke guides her to a small room, suggesting she rest. But Melphiera shakes her head, saying she isn't tired at all. The flight had been comfortable thanks to his magic. Just then, she catches a strange, unpleasant smell drifting through the corridor. Her expression changes and she rushes off to trace it, with the Duke following close behind. The smell leads her straight to the kitchen, where she discovers the terrible truth. It's dinner. Inside, Mullen and Zeth are stirring a thin pot of grain porridge. Startled by her sudden entrance, they freeze, but Melphiera explains she has permission to be there and immediately examines their cooking. Seeing the watery porridge, she decides it won't do. She opens her pouch and reveals a piece of golden meat royal noodle. Mullen is shocked, recognizing it instantly. Melphiera calmly explains it's salted royal noodle, preserved from the golden beast she prepared herself. When Mullen hesitates, asking if she's sure about using something so valuable, she smiles and says it's fine. Zeth still looks skeptical, so she offers to let him taste it firsthand. She slices a small piece, grills it carefully over the fire, and makes sure it's cooked perfectly before handing it to him. She reassures him that all magical toxins are removed, it's completely safe. Zeth still hesitates, so Mullen jumps in eagerly, asking for his share. Melphiera laughs and grills another piece, filling the room with a rich, mouth-watering aroma. Mullen takes a bite and instantly lights up. The flavor is deep, tender, and perfectly salted. He declares it's even better aged than fresh, praising her skill sincerely. Just then, a calm but sharp voice cuts through the air. It's the Duke, standing in the doorway with an unimpressed expression. He remarks dryly how much Mullen seems to be enjoying himself, making both men freeze. With a quiet, slightly jealous tone, he asks if he might have a bite too. Melphiera, unbothered, smiles and tells him not to sulk, she's already prepared some for him. He insists he isn't sulking, though his glare at Mullen says otherwise. When she offers him a freshly grilled piece, he refuses, still brooding. Amused, Melphiera decides to coax him like a stubborn child. She teasingly tells him to say ah, but he doesn't move. Then she blurts out his full name, Duke Rest, just like a nanny scolding a child. Caught off guard, he blushes slightly, and in that instant, she pops the bite into his mouth. Pleased with her small victory, Melphiera asks how it tastes. The Duke replies simply, sweet. She laughs, explaining that it's just the natural flavor of the fat when cooked right, and asks if he likes it. He nods in approval, and Mullen and Zeth exchange relieved looks now that his mood has lifted. When Zeth finally finishes his share, Melphiera asks what he thinks, and he admits it's delicious. Happy with the result, she quickly takes charge, asking them to help with the next batch. She tells them to cut the meat into small pieces while she sorts the grains, and they immediately obey. By dinner time, the whole fort smells amazing. The soldiers are amazed by the flavor, wondering what kind of meat it is. When they hear it's royal noodle, the golden beast, they're stunned. Melphiera smiles softly, happy to see everyone enjoying the meal. The Duke praises how well the dish brings out the meat's natural aroma and asks if she did anything special. She modestly says she only diced and fried it gently. Then, to her surprise, the Duke offers to feed her himself. Flustered, she tries to refuse, but he insists until she finally takes a bite, admitting it's wonderful. Laughing nervously, she says she can handle the rest herself as the Duke watches with quiet amusement. After dinner, the Duke keeps offering Melphiera bites, leaving her flustered. When the meal ends, he asks her to speak to him less formally. She's momentarily unsure but manages to say his full name instead of his title. He seems pleased and explains that most engaged couples use each other's names or gentle endearments. The thought makes Melphiera think of her parents, who always spoke naturally to each other. Though it feels strange to change her habits, she softly repeats his name, practicing. The Duke chuckles and suggests she could even use a nickname. As she says his name, a faint golden glow spreads through his eyes. Alarmed, Melphiera calls for help. Mullen rushes in, worried, and the Duke reassures them it's just a brief loss of control over his magic. Still, Melphiera worries the monster meat she served him might have caused it. Mullen examines him carefully and explains there's no real danger, his magical reserves are immense, far beyond a normal person's. Temporary surges happen, but once he releases the excess power, he'll stabilize. Watching him straighten up, Melphiera sees his composure return. The Duke dismisses their concern and announces he'll hunt the creature the next day to expend his overflowing magic. Mullen immediately volunteers to accompany him. As they leave, Melphiera can't stop thinking about his glowing eyes. She realizes the Duke's magic is far greater than ordinary humans, powerful enough that it must be released or it could overwhelm him. Humans and monsters both carry magic, but too much buildup in monsters turns it into toxins, corrupting their bodies and driving them insane. If humans can't tolerate that accumulation, could the Duke suffer the same fate? The thought brings a painful memory back, her mother's death. Melphiera remembers standing beside her mother's bed as a child. Her mother, weak from uncontrollable magic, reassured her not to cry. When her mother died, townspeople whispered she'd been poisoned by monster meat. Melphiera knew the truth. Her mother had suffered from an incomplete magic circle. The accumulated power from monsters had turned into toxins her body couldn't handle. Humans are fragile, magic overflow destroys them from within long before madness takes hold. Watching her mother helplessly, Melphiera had vowed she would never let such a fate strike anyone else. Now, seeing the Duke, that resolve burns anew. She silently promises to perfect her research so no one else will suffer from uncontrolled magic, not while she still draws breath. The next morning, she wakes to find the Duke's coat draped over her. Memories of the previous night remind her that she must have fallen asleep pacing, worrying about him. Her face flushes at the thought that he carried her to bed. Gathering herself, she rushes through the fort until she finds him calmly drinking morning tea. Relief washes over her. When she asks about his condition, he apologizes softly, insisting his magic hasn't caused harm. He then draws her into a gentle embrace, teasing her that he's perfectly fine. She notices how cold his skin feels. The chill betrays his words. He explains he went to the river in the freezing night to catch the creature. Realizing this, she scolds him softly, worried he might fall ill, but he smiles calmly, saying her care is enough to keep him warm. As she thanks him for lending his coat, he leans closer, suggesting they step outside together to see the catch, leaving her cheeks flushed with embarrassment and affection. Early in the morning, Melphiera finally asks the Duke the question that's been on her mind, and he confirms that the captured creature is still alive, safely trapped in the metal net. Amazed, she realizes there's no chance of going back to sleep, so she decides to start preparing the monster right away. The Duke agrees to help, but when she reminds him he hasn't slept all night, he just smiles, saying being near her makes him feel calm. When he gently brushes her hair, her heart skips a beat, and she turns away in embarrassment, saying she hasn't even cleaned up yet. But he teasingly replies that he's the one who's dirtier, then pulls her into a warm back hug, his voice low and playful. Hearing him softly call her name leaves her flustered and breathless until Szeth suddenly appears at the doorway, clearly startled by the scene. Melphiera quickly regains her composure to greet him, though Szeth awkwardly avoids their eyes, leaving the room in tense, embarrassed silence. Once everyone gathers, Melphiera announces that it's time to cook the creature. The knights and servants look uncertain, but the Duke just says he's hungry. Calmly, Melphiera asks for oil and flour to make batter. Szeth volunteers to fetch them, and she thanks him with a smile. Later, she returns with sheets of oil paper covered in magic circles, explaining that she'll use them to extract the creature's magic power since water would wash away any circle drawn on the ground. The Duke finds the idea clever. At the river, he orders the knights to pull up the heavy net, but warns them to stay cautious since the monster fish is still dangerous. When it finally breaks the surface, its massive body glistening in the light, Melphiera is stunned. It's even larger than she imagined. The Duke explains it's likely 7 or 8 years old and especially aggressive this season. When he moves to kill it, Melphiera insists they do it properly. She covers its eyes to calm it, then guides the Duke on where to strike just behind the eye, above the gills. Following her lead, he lands a clean, powerful blow. The monster finally goes still, and Melphiera praises both him and the knights before stepping up, ready to continue her work. Melphiera presses several magic circles onto the monster's body, offers a solemn vow to honor its life, and starts chanting to extract its power. As the seals activate, her hair suddenly glows red, and the creature's magic essence flows into a waiting flask. She notices there's barely any blood, but that the magic feels dense and potent, and can't help feeling a bit self-conscious about the glow drawing attention. When the ritual ends, she hands the filled flask to the Duke, while the knights remove the paper seals. Thinking ahead, she admits she can't always rely on him for butchering, and asks him to teach her how to properly behead and process monsters. The Duke, amused and eager, agrees, saying he enjoys cooking monsters with her making her cheeks flush. Melphiera reflects on how she used to work alone back home, never sharing this kind of teamwork with hunters or knights. She then suggests chopping off the head and removing the skin with the scales attached. The Duke asks for guidance, and she instructs him to slice diagonally from behind the gills toward the dorsal fin. Though he says it's an awkward angle, his strike is swift and clean, severing the head in one motion. The knights cheer, and Melphiera praises how precise and neat the cut is. Even Mullen admits he is impressed. When the Duke overhears them admiring him, he turns red, and Melphiera hides a smile, finding his shy reaction endearing. As evening falls, she moves on to removing the organs, noting they aren't suitable for eating. The Duke agrees and uses fire magic to burn them away. Mullen explains it's a spell the Duke invented to help with monster disposal, and Melphiera nods, impressed. When they return, Szeth tells them the fortress kitchen can't be used for monster meat, so they'll need to cook outside. Melphiera agrees it's better anyway since frying gets messy. She asks who's good at cleaning fish, and Ambry steps forward, saying he's handled delicate furs before. Under her direction, he carefully separates the meat from the skin with impressive precision. Melphiera praises his flawless work, joking it almost feels wasteful to chop something prepared so perfectly. Everyone gets excited about frying the monster fish. Melphiera mixes flour, water, and spices for the batter, no eggs available, and explains her 2-pot frying method, one cooler, one hotter. The first fry turns the coating golden, and the second crisps it perfectly. The Duke accidentally overcooks his batch, but Melphiera reassures him, saying it's still good and asks to taste one. Since her hands are covered in batter, she shyly tells him to feed her. Embarrassed, the Duke cools a piece and gently offers it to her. Melphiera tastes the fried monster fish with delight, savoring the chewy texture and how the crispy, salty coating perfectly complements the meat's flavor. Before she can comment more, the Duke suddenly eats the rest of the piece she was holding, agreeing it's delicious and just needs a little more salt. She blushes hard, realizing he just ate from the same piece, but he calmly continues talking about the flavor as if nothing happened. Before she can stop him, he tries another properly fried piece himself, ignoring her offer to test it first, then hands her one and encourages her to taste it too. She takes a bite and is surprised by how soft and tender it is. The meat flakes apart easily and feels light enough to eat endlessly. The Duke remarks that both versions, the crisp and the soft, have their own charm. Melphiera agrees, saying she wants both kinds for herself, which makes him chuckle and decide they should make both so everyone can choose. He calls Mullen over for a taste, and Mullen eagerly joins, thrilled at the idea. Melphiera realizes it's a great plan. People can enjoy whichever style they prefer. With plenty of food to go around, she also thinks the crispier version would make excellent travel rations. Once all the cooking is done, she thanks the Duke for helping, but he waves it off, asking if she's tired from standing so long. She insists she's fine, saying she actually enjoyed herself because he was there. That makes him smile softly, and he says that's enough for him. When he wonders if they'll eat outside, Melphiera tells him she already asked the fortress chef to prepare bread and vegetables in the Great Hall. She urges him to go ahead and enjoy a proper breakfast. The Duke agrees but hesitates, looking like he wants to stay longer until she calls Mullen and tells him to escort the Duke there and prepare the best meal for him. Mullen enthusiastically takes the Duke's hand despite his protests, insisting no one will start eating until he does. As they leave, Melphiera calls after them, asking the Duke to season the food to his liking. Watching them go, Melphiera feels a pang of guilt, realizing she's made him work too hard when he needs rest. She scolds herself for always getting carried away by curiosity whenever a new monster appears and promises to be more careful. Her thoughts are interrupted when Ambry and Zeth approach, offering to help clean up. She starts to decline, but they remind her that 3 people can finish faster and then enjoy a meal together. Grateful, she accepts. While tidying, she remembers the leftover fried pieces and offers them a taste. They eagerly try them, Zeth noting the soft, glistening texture, and Ambry commenting on the rich, oily flavor. Melphiera explains their belly cuts, not ideal for frying. Ambry says they're still delicious and would taste even better with a bit of sour fruit juice. Zeth mentions there's fruit in the Great Hall, and Melphiera's eyes light up as she urges them to hurry before it's all gone. The 3 of them quickly finish cleaning up and head toward the dining hall together. As they walk, Melphiera laughs at herself, realizing she's once again failed at her promise to be more cautious. She admits she has no restraint, especially when it comes to food, but decides she can always start being sensible tomorrow. Ambry shouts for a charge toward the hall, Zeth cheers in agreement, and Melphiera joins in. When she enters the dining hall, she's amazed to see the knights and officials happily enjoying the monster meat they'd cooked together. The room is full of laughter and the rich aroma of fried food. The Duke calls out and gestures for her to sit beside him. He tells her they'll be departing soon and should reach Galbraith by evening, reminding her to eat well before the journey. She agrees and tells him to do the same. The Duke wraps vegetables around pieces of fried fish before taking a bite, catching her attention. Melphiera watches, impressed by his creative way of eating, and decides to try it too. The fresh crunch of the vegetables balances the rich flavor of the fish perfectly, and she's surprised by how light and clean it tastes. Just then, Zeth approaches with a small green fruit, explaining it's cabo, the one they'd mentioned earlier. It's in season and known for its sharp, refreshing flavor. Melphiera examines it curiously, then squeezes a bit of juice over a fried piece. The moment she takes a bite, she's stunned by how the sourness cuts through the rich fat, making every mouthful bright and refreshing. She immediately thinks it's perfect for anyone with a tired stomach or small appetite. The Duke, watching her enthusiasm, asks if it's really that good. She smiles and asks if he likes sour flavors. He admits he isn't sure, he only has them occasionally while drinking. Curious, he tries the cabo himself, but the strong sourness instantly hits him. Concerned, Melphiera leans forward, asking if he's okay. He laughs, saying it's fine, though it's definitely an intense way to wake up. Amused, Melphiera quietly notes to herself that the Duke doesn't like sour foods and promises not to make that mistake again. As the hall buzzes with cheerful chatter, the Duke gives her a soft smile, saying he truly had fun with her that day. Later, when the group begins preparing to leave, Zeth reports that they've made sandwiches so everyone can eat during the flight. Ambry adds that they salted and froze the leftover meat under Melphiera's instructions. She thanks them warmly, glad the food will last longer. Seeing everyone's happy faces, she feels deeply content. The Duke then calls to his knights, reminding them the trip to Galbraith will be long and to stay alert. The knights respond confidently as they mount their dragons, the wind swirling around them. With everything ready, the Duke turns to Melphiera, announcing their departure. She nods firmly, addressing him with respect. Together, they rise into the sky, finally on their way to Galbraith. That concludes the anime recap. As always, if you enjoyed, let me know down below and I'm out.